صاحب الزمان الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله الحسين يا شهيد يا مظلوم يا غريب كربلاء. May Allah grant us all His ziyarah in this life and His shafa'ah in the next life. Illuminate your heart and majlis with a loud salawat for Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We mentioned the famous hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari last night. The famous companion of Rasulullah, who was also a loyal companion of 5 Imams of Ahlul Bayt, all the way to Imam al-Baqir. We said that the Prophet said, according to this hadith, that we have many distractions. There are many entities that constantly distract us from our true goal in life, from Allah. And they try to derail us from the Sirat al-Mustaqim. But the Prophet says there are 2 that we have to be extra careful of. There are 2 distractions and entities and elements that pose the greatest threat to our progress towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So thus we have to be vigilant and we have to be very alert when it comes to these 2 elements. We said the first one that we spoke about last night, the Prophet said, أَخْوَفُ مَا أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ. My greatest fear for you, for my ummah, he tells Jabir, my greatest fear is 2 things. Number 1, al-hawa, the nafs. فَإِنَّهُ يَصُدُّ عَنِ الْحَقِّ. The nafs prevents you from following the truth. And we spoke about one aspect of the nafs last night. We said either because it blinds you from seeing the truth, or even if you do see it, your ego, your arrogance will not allow you to submit to the truth. That's the first aspect that we spoke about of the desires or of the nafs. The second aspect of the nafs that we have to be careful with, that also may block us sometimes from following the truth and submitting to the truth, is our desires, our love for the dunya, for materialism. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this nafs, and its natural inclination is to be what? Greedy. Being generous is usually more difficult than being greedy, right? 90% of people. Yeah, there's a small exception. There are some people, maybe they are naturally just generous. Naturally they just don't want really anything. Naturally content. But for the majority of people, their nafs is greedy. It wants everything for itself. Whatever it sees, it wants it. That's why you have to what? Practice jihadun nafs. Why? Why jihadun nafs? Because this nafs will drive you crazy. I want this, I want that. See, many people, they're not happy with their lives. Why? They're not content. Because anything they see, they want it. Right? Their nafs is greedy. You're on social media, you're following profiles of successful people, And then all of a sudden, you're no longer happy with your own life. Because your nafs now wants that. Even though you're living a very good life. Alhamdulillah, you have a good income, nice family, nice home. But there's always bigger homes. There's always people that are richer. They have fancier cars. They have lives that are wilder, more interesting. So your nafs keeps on wanting and wanting and wanting, and there's just no limit. That's why these social media apps are dangerous sometimes. They're dangerous to our mental health. They pose a huge danger to your happiness. To not sit and just scroll. Never do that. This is the worst thing that you are doing to your nafs. You're feeding it the fuel for it to be what? A wild beast and want everything. And once your nafs wants something, it will drive you crazy. وَإِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ, the Quran says. When your nafs wants something, it will command you. It won't politely ask. No, it'll give you orders until you turn into a slave for your own nafs. You will be a slave for your own nafs. It dictates everything to you. That's why the Ahlul Bayt teach us jihadun nafs. You have to what? You have to tame it. You have to discipline this nafs. Not everything that it sees you give it. And even better, try to prevent the nafs from seeing from the beginning. As they say, out of sight, out of mind, right? If you don't know how much your neighbor makes, if you don't know what car your cousin drives, you're not going to want it. Once you know, this is when you're going to want it. That's why it's always a good idea, brothers and sisters, to not follow the news. Just, for the sake of following the news of the community, of the people. Because eventually you will hear things about even the success of other people. Of what other people possess, what they have. And that sometimes will what? That sometimes will stimulate, it will provoke that greed within me. And then you have to practice jihad al-nafs, right? Why provoke the nafs and then wage jihad against it? Try your best to not provoke it from day one. That's why don't even try to seek news of what people say. I don't care. What am I going to get? Just following people's news and accounts. It's just going to make my nafs greedier and greedier. And the more you give it, it's not going to be happy. Because it's going to want more and more and more. This is tarweedun nafs. Even Imam Ali Nahjul Balagha, he speaks about that. He says, even I, Amir al-Mu'mineen, have to practice tarweedun nafs. Meaning I discipline myself. Such that my nafs doesn't have too many high expectations. You've seen spoiled kids? Spoiled kids that have wealthy parents. Whatever you give them, they don't like it, right? Why? Because they've seen everything. They've done everything. Oh, this is boring. This is a repeat. I've seen that. I've done that. I've eaten. Nothing will make them happy anymore. Because that's it. Their expectations have gone so high. So you have to what? Reset those expectations. Sometimes by what? By disciplining the nafs and sometimes depriving it. This is what Imam Ali alayhi salam says. He says, لَأُرَوِّضَنَّ نَفْسِي. Tarweed and nafs is exactly like exercise, but for your nafs. He says that I will treat and discipline my nafs. لَأُرَوِّضَنَّ نَفْسِي رِيَاضَةً. Riyadha is what? Usually, it's a physical act, it's like exercise, a sport. But this is what? Spiritual exercise. لَأُرَوِّضَنَّ نَفْسِي رِيَاضَةً تَهِشُّ معها تهش معها إلى القرص إذا طعمت مقدورا. He says that I will discipline myself and lower the expectations, make the expectations so low, such that when my nafs sees salt and bread, it becomes excited. You see how low the bar was? What excites us these days, brothers and sisters? What? For us, if we want to be excited, right? We have to get really creative. We have to do something exotic. We have to spend so much money. Tonight's dinner, if we are told that it's going to be bread and salt, it's going to be bread and yogurt, is anybody going to be happy? No. Everyone will be frowning at me and at the cook, right? Why? Because our nafs has high expectations. If there's no chicken, fish, lamb, beef, or shrimp in it, I don't want it. My nafs won't even enjoy it because I've spoiled it so much. Imam Ali says, I have disciplined my nafs to the level that when my nafs sees bread and salt, there's nothing more basic than that. My nafs is happy, excited. Just like you and I are excited when we see our favorite foods, the kebabs and so on and so forth. This is tarweedun nafs. So the nafs is greedy. And not only is it greedy, but the Prophet says that it prevents you from following the truth. Why? How does the greed of the nafs prevent us sometimes from following the truth? You see, Islam is not against the dunya. Islam is not against possessing money, becoming wealthy, possessing materialistic objects. Islam is not against that. In fact, Islam encourages us to be successful. If it wasn't for the fact that we have brothers and sisters that are successful, that are financially successful, we cannot even advance the interests of our religion. Can you build a mosque if you don't have money? No. Can you maintain the mosque if you don't have money? No. Can you build an Islamic school for your children to protect them from all this liberal nonsense that's happening right now? Can you do it without money? Of course not. You need a lot of money, millions of dollars. So to protect your own faith, many times you have to spend money. You want to go to ziyarah, right? It's costly, it's not free. You want to go to Hajj. You want to go to Umrah. All this stuff is costly. So Islam is not against seeking wealth or possessing money. But the problem is, the dunya has the potential to prevent you from seeing the truth or from following the truth in the same way that your ego that we spoke about last night. And that's in two ways. The first way is that this dunya, my friends, has a very, very particular sweetness to it. That when you taste the dunya, you get addicted to it. You get addicted to it and you cannot let go anymore. So if sometimes your religion, your faith, the truth requires you to get rid of some materialistic aspects, you won't be able to. Because you will be obsessively attached to your belongings, to your wealth, to your property, to whatever you own. That's the problem with the dunya. Is when what? When we get too attached to the dunya. Islam says, fine, become a multimillionaire, but don't be too attached to it, such that if you lose the money, you're depressed. If you have the money, you're happy. If you're asked to give the money fi sabilillah, it's too difficult for you to do it. This money is no good. It'll just make life difficult. Not having that money is much better, because it will prevent you from doing the right thing and following the truth. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let me give you an example. During the time of Rasulullah, there was a companion of Rasulullah by the name of Tha'laba. Tha'laba, famous companion, he was very poor. He came to Rasulullah one day, he told him, Ya Rasulullah, can you do a dua for me? He said, of course, what do you want? Ask Allah to make me wealthy. You are Rasulullah. If you ask Allah anything, Allah will give you. Allah will answer you. So the Prophet said, are you sure this is what you want? He said, yes, of course. Being wealthy, comfortable, why would anyone want that? The Prophet gave him a warning. He told him, قَلِيلٌ تُؤَدِّي مَعَهُ شُكْرَهُ خَيْرٌ مِّن كَثِيرٍ لَا تُؤَدِّي شُكْرَهُ. He says, oh Tha'laba, before I do a dua, just remember that having a little, having just what's enough in life, but at the same time you are what? You are grateful to Allah and you are carrying out your duties towards Allah. That's much better than becoming wealthy, receiving more wealth than you can handle. Because with wealth comes responsibilities, brothers and sisters. With wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more He gives you, the more He expects from you. The less He gives you, the less He expects from you. We have many traditions from the Ahlul Bayt. Do you want Allah to be high demand with you? Have high expectations from you? Or you want Allah Azza wa Jal to want the minimum from you? If you want Allah to want the minimum from you on the Day of Judgment, then you ask Allah for the minimum. Or ask Allah to give you whatever He thinks it's best. But if you set the bar high, I will not be happy, Ya Allah, until I become a multi-millionaire, until this, until that. Allah is going to tell you, okay, I'll give you that, but on the Day of Judgment, I'm going to set some high bars also for you. Is it worth it? There's nothing free, brothers and sisters. Nothing comes for free. There's a price that we have to pay for everything that we get. And that's why, if you remember, we recite this in Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, the night of 19th, when Imam Ali was struck in the musibah. That night, he had iftar at his daughter's house, either Kulthum or Zainab. And she put two types of food. طبعا two types of food, we don't mean like chicken or beef, right? No. She put bread, and then she put salt and yogurt. The Imam considered that as two types of food. Either salt or yogurt, but not both of them. Or milk, let's say. So he told her to remove one. And then he told her this reason. He told her, my dear daughter, do you want my Day of Judgment to be long on the Day of Judgment? Do you want Allah Azza wa Jal to prolong my hisab on the Day of Judgment? I don't want the extra food. I want to take the minimum, so that Allah asked me the minimum. But when you ask for more, Allah Azza wa Jal is going to ask more. Unless, of course, unless you use that money fi sabilillah. So anyway, Tha'laba, he doesn't heed to the warning of the Prophet. He says, no, Ya Rasulullah, do dua. Rasulullah does a dua. And through the miracle of Allah, Tha'laba starts becoming wealthy. He becomes wealthier and wealthier every day, until he has to move out of the city of Medina, because he started a sheep business. And he owned thousands of livestock. He's so busy, happy now. Now, if you don't own any money, right? If you don't make money, you don't pay taxes. If you don't make money, you don't pay khums. You don't pay zakat. You don't pay anything else you could receive. Before, Tha'laba was probably taking zakat. Now, he's a multi-millionaire. Now he has to pay a huge amount of what? Zakat. So the Prophet sends who? The zakat collector to Tha'laba. He does the calculations. For example, he has 10,000 sheep. You have to pay 500 sheep. 500 sheep! I have to just pay it like that? The greed kicks in. He knows Rasulullah. Aslan, this was all through the barakah of Rasulullah. It's not like he was someone who was smart and he started his business. No, it was all the dua of Rasulullah. You see, you know that this is wrong, but you cannot say no. Why? Because you're a slave to your nafs now. The greed is too powerful. Tha'laba, he just can't let go. He loves his property and possessions more than anything. He refuses. He refuses. He says no. They go back to the Prophet. They tell him, Tha'laba, he's not willing. He's not giving the zakat. The Prophet sends again. Every time he rejects, he makes an excuse every single time. Makes an excuse. Until Allah brought down a verse in the Quran, Allah condemned him in the Quran. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ عَاهَدَ اللَّهِ لَإِنْ آتَانَا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ لَنَصَّدَّقَنَّ وَلَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And amongst them are those, the Quran says, that what? They made a promise that if we become wealthy, we will give صَدَقَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and we will be righteous. فَلَمَّا آتَاهُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, when Allah made them wealthy, بَخِلُوا بِهِ وَتَوَلَّوْا وَهُمْ, they were stingy and they did not want. فَأَعْقَبَهُمْ نِفَاقٍ, Allah called him a munafiq. He's a hypocrite because he lied. Was it worth it, brothers and sisters? So that a few months or years he becomes wealthy, but the Quran condemns him forever? It's not worth it. So sometimes your wealth will not allow you to do what's right. Your possessions, you're so attached to them, you just can't give it away. And other times, you see, other times, the problem with wealth, the problem with this dunya, is that it may not necessarily, you may not necessarily be too attached to it, but it will distract you too much from Allah and the Akhirah. What do I mean? Have you seen some people who are workaholics? They never come to the masjid. They miss Salat al-Jum'ah every week. The last time they went to Ziyarah was in 1920 something, right? 100 years ago. They haven't went to Hajj. They don't come to most of even the social events. And when you ask them why, it's always the same excuse. Work, say it. I have work. I have work. And usually, with all due respect to anyone in that profession here, usually I've noticed this with a lot of health professionals, right? A lot of doctors. Some doctors are workaholics, right? I was reading the other day that some doctors work as much as 65 hours a week. 65 hours a week. And some of these doctors are very good people. Mu'mineen. They're even generous. But what's the problem? The dunya has taken too much of their time. Khalas bah. They don't have time for Allah. They don't have time for the masjid. They don't have time for ziyarah. They don't have time for anything. Wallahi, when I see some of these individuals, I feel sorry for them. I consider that as a curse. Wallahi. Because your entire day and month and year, it's all consumed by the dunya. When do you have time for your akhirah? 12 hours, 13 hours of work, and then you're tired. They don't see their family that much. They don't have that much time to spend with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reciting Quran, so on and so on. I consider that wealth as a curse, as a la'na. This wealth is what? Distracting you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like a barrier between you and Allah. Does anyone want that type of wealth that doesn't give you time to spend with Allah Azza wa Jal? And likewise, the Quran gives us warnings about this. He says, do not let لا تلهكم أموالكم. Do not let your money distract you from Allah. Even if you're not attached to it, but sometimes it just takes too much of your time. There's another example during the time of Rasulullah, and this is mentioned by the fifth Imam. Imam al-Baqir, in one hadith, he tells us the story. Remember the story of Tha'laba, greed, and the stinginess? There was another companion, his name was Sa'd. Sa'd, al-Imam al-Baqir says he was so poor. He did not own anything. He was so poor that even the Prophet felt sorry for him. Sa'd was in the masjid 24/7, right? Salatul Subuh never missed, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, even the Nawafil. He was just there all the time, because when you're poor, you don't have a job, you don't know what to do, right? That's why you see, sometimes I see some people, all of a sudden they show up in the masjid, right? Well, what brings you here? You know what, I got fired, for example, or I got laid off. So when your company lays you off, this is when you come to Allah, mashallah. I just put myself in Allah's shoes. Okay, now when he doesn't have a job, he wants to come to me. I don't want you. So anyway, he's there at the masjid 24/7. The Prophet feels sorry for him. Jibreel comes down upon him. He tells him, "Oh Muhammad, Allah has seen your sadness for Sa'ad. See how poor he is and how you're so sad for him." The Prophet said, "Yes, haram, he doesn't have anything." Jibreel told him, "Do you want Allah to make him wealthy?" He said, "Yes." Jibreel said, "It's very easy." He took out a dirham. He told him, "Give this to Sa'ad. Whatever Sa'ad buys with this, it will turn into gold." Blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal. The Prophet is so happy. He tells Sa'ad, "Come here, take this dirham. Go do business with it." He says, "What do? I don't know how to do business." He says, "It doesn't matter. Whatever you buy, you will sell it with 100% profit. Whatever you buy." He goes, he buys something for 1 dirham, he sells it for 2 dirhams. 2, 4, 4, 8, 8, 16, 32, right? The mathematicians, you can continue. Until he becomes mega rich. He becomes so wealthy, the Prophet notices, he starts skipping some of the salats. Salat al-Dhuhr, where is Sa'ad? Oh, he's not there. He tells one of the Sahaba, "Go see where Sa'ad is." He goes, he sees Sa'ad has a store now, he has like 50 customers. He tells him, "Where are you?" It's like, tell the Prophet, "Wallah, I don't have time. I have to do my checkbooks, and I have to do this and that, and I have to deliver these goods. I don't have time. Inshallah, I'll come for Maghrib." But then Maghrib comes, he's still busy in the store. The Prophet comes, Dhuhr, Asr, he's not there. Maghrib, Isha, he's not there. The Prophet, once again, he is disappointed and depressed. Because now he feels like he lost Sa'ad. The next day he comes, Salatul Jum'ah. He's supposed to leave and come, but he has too many customers. "Ya Rasulullah, forgive me. Let me just finish at least this transaction." And that transaction takes forever. Then he misses the salah. Jibreel comes down upon the Prophet. He told him, "Ya Muhammad, you're upset once again?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Are you more upset now that he's wealthy or when he was poor?" He said, "No, now I'm more upset." Why? Because now I feel like I lost him. I feel like he has no time for me, for Allah, for his akhirah anymore. So that's why I'm more upset. Jibreel told him, "Do you want him to go back to his old condition?" The Prophet said, "Yes." Jibreel told him, "It's very simple. Go and ask him to give you back that dirham, that magic dirham." He went to Sa'ad, he told him, "Give me back my dirham." He told him, "I'll give you 1,000 dirhams." He's like, no, just give me my dirham." He takes the dirham. Like we said, this guy doesn't know how to do anything, right? Doesn't know the ABCs of business. He comes after 3-4 days, he's bankrupt. Once again, what? He's in front of Rasulullah. He has nothing to do. So the Quran tells us that sometimes your wealth will be an obstacle between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. It will be an obstacle between you and the truth. So the Prophet says, beware of wealth. Beware of what? Hawa, desires, the love of the dunya. Because sometimes it's the greed, the stinginess, and other times, no, it will consume too much of your time. That's why I spoke about this yesterday for the young ones. When you're thinking about a career, we said make sure that you consider, will this please Allah? Will this make my faith easier, practicing my faith easier or harder? Another thing to consider is, will this job make me into a workaholic? Will this job require too much work? Maybe that's something that I should stay away from. Right? Is it worth spending all that time on the dunya and I don't have time for anything else? So anyway, this is the problem that wealth or the dunya poses. And there's a hadith from the 6th Imam, it's very beautiful. He says that, Iblis, the shaitan, he has so many tools and weapons to fool the human being. And he tries every single one of them. He tries to fool me and deceive me, misguide me through arrogance, through envy, right? Through hatred, through anger, through this and that. But then he says, but if all else fails, He has one last resort that he knows will always prevail. You know what the Imam says? He says, and that is money, the love for money and wealth. He says when he goes to that strategy, he will work so hard to misguide me through wealth and money. And the Imam even says, he settles at this tactic, meaning he doesn't just use it once or two, he uses it as a long-term strategy. So the problem is, the more money Allah gives you, the more the shaitan will target you. The more he'll come after you. What is the shaitan going to do? Follow a homeless person, right? What can a homeless person really do? If you give him money, maybe he'll go buy some alcohol, right? But if he doesn't have money, he can't really, without money, you can't really sin too much. You can't buy alcohol, right? You can't, for example, you can't even buy a weapon to hurt somebody. So the more money Allah gives you, the greater of a target you become for the shaitan. He will try so hard to misguide you with that money. And like we said, brothers and sisters, we have examples in history of people who knew the truth, who recognized the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, but yet their greed and their attachment of the dunya did not allow them to follow the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Amongst them, I consider this as one of the most disappointing and really hurtful incidents, is the story of Az-Zubayr. Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awam, the cousin of the Prophet, he was one of the most loyal supporters of Imam Ali in the Saqifa. When the Prophet died, the greatest supporter of Imam Ali was Az-Zubayr. Such that there's a hadith I read, Salman al-Farisi, he says that after the Prophet died, there was only a few of us that we supported Imam Ali. He says, me, Zubayr, Miqdad, Abu Dhar, and then he says, the one that was the most resilient, the one that supported Imam Ali, the greatest, that was the toughest, was Az-Zubayr. And it was not just a show, it was genuine loyalty for Imam Ali. Allahu Akbar. Go 30 years after that. How does Az-Zubayr die? The same man that he was willing to die for 30 years ago, now he has come in the battle of Jamal, he wants to fight against Imam Ali and kill him. Why? Why? You know why? Because of that stinginess and that greed, the dunya. The lure of the dunya was too strong. Zubayr came to Imam Ali in the beginning of the Khilafah and he wanted, money from Imam Ali. Imam Ali is the Khalifa, I was a supporter. And he expected special treatment from Imam Ali. Imam Ali had none of that nonsense. Everyone was, even his own brother, Aqil, he would give him exactly what he would give a stranger. Equality. Absolutely no nepotism, no favoritism, none of that. Zubayr and Talha, they come to visit Imam Ali when he's the Khalifa. The Imam tells them, what have you come for? What's your issue? Is it a personal issue or no? Is it something that has to do, a public issue, the Muslim affairs? They tell him, no, it's a private issue. There's a candle. The Imam turns it off. He goes inside his house. He brings another candle. He lights it. They tell him, what's going on? What are you doing, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen? He says, that candle was from Bayt Mal al-Muslimin, the Muslim treasury. And that cannot be spent on personal stuff, right? You have a personal matter. So I went and I brought a candle that I bought with my own money. We can use this. Allahu Akbar. Look at Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam. How careful he was with the huquq. So what was it all about? They wanted Imam Ali alayhi salam to give them power and money. And the Imam, he didn't have any, as we say, he didn't do any ta'aruf, right? He was straight in your face. The Imam, when it came to haqq and batil, absolutely, he was not shy or embarrassed, he didn't care. He told them, I'm sorry, everyone is equal. I cannot give you more than that. This was the spark. This is what led eventually, now obviously his son also, the traditions tell us, was a Nasibi. He was also, pushing his father, pressuring him against Imam Ali. But that was the spark, the initial spark was that greed. That Imam Ali gave me nothing until he dies in that battlefield. Now he did pull out of the battle, but he never repented. He never went and joined the side of Imam Ali. After he pulled out, someone went and killed him. استجيروا بالله من سوء العاقبة. This is what we call سوء العاقبة. عاقبة bad. There is no worse example than Az-Zubayr. This is what the dunya. And that's why you see Imam Zain al-Abidin in Dua Abi Hamza Thamali. He says, إلهي أخرج حب الدنيا من قلبي. Oh Allah, please take the love of dunya from my heart. He doesn't say keep the dunya away from me. Like we said, dunya, you can use it for your akhirah. He says the love of dunya. So this is the first and foremost that the Holy Prophet warned us from. Al-hawa, فَإِنَّهُ يَصُدُّ عَنِ الْحَقِّ. You will not be able to follow the truth either because of your arrogance, because of your ego, because of your greed, because of you're distracted. You just don't have time for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no time. It will prevent you from following. I was having this discussion earlier. Sometimes when we are confused, should we do this, should we not do that, should I buy this house, should I choose this career, should I follow this transaction, should I, right? What do? We do an istikhara, right? Akhira istikhara. And many times, unfortunately, I have noticed that some of us don't really understand what the istikhara means. We think it's sort of a form of fortune telling. Someone calls me, Sayyid, can you do istikhara? I want to buy a piece of land, right? Investment. So I do the istikhara, it's good. He calls me after a couple of months, Sayyid, what kind of istikhara you did for me? The price is going down every single day. First of all, the mancha. What does that have to do with me? You wanted istikhara, which means consulting Allah. Next time you do your own istikhara. Don't come take from my time. I have to do istikhara for you and then you're not happy. Learn how to do istikhara, you do it. And by the way, during the times of the Imams, there was no such thing as go ask the Imam to do istikhara. There's not a single hadith where a companion comes to the Imam and he says, can you please do istikhara for me? No. The Imams would teach his companions how to do istikhara. They would do it. This is a bid'ah, innovation. Now it's not wrong, but it's not practiced by Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. But unfortunately, sometimes we get lazy, right? We just want to throw it all on the Maulana, the Sayyid, the Sheikh, and we're not even happy with the result. So anyway, he tells me, what type of istikhara was that? I'm losing money on this. Or for example, it's, other times it's other things, marriage, and I'm not very happy with my wife or whatever. The problem with these individuals, they think that istikhara is fortune telling. Good means I'll become wealthy. Bad means I'm going to lose. That's how you label good and bad. That's not how Allah labels good and bad. Because what is istikhara? It means you're consulting Allah. If Allah Azza wa Jal sees that there is no good in making you wealthy, you'll become like Tha'laba or like Sa'ad, right? You won't have time, a workaholic. If the istikhara is bad, you can end up being a millionaire. And it's still bad. Why? Because the standard that Allah uses is different than you and I. Our standard. Allah Azza wa Jal cares about your akhirah more than your dunya. Allah cares about your relationship with Him more than being comfortable in this life and being wealthy. What's the point? He gives you that wealth and then you become like Tha'laba, you become like Sa'ad, you become a workaholic, you have absolutely no time to do anything but work for your dunya. What's the point of that? You're just accumulating all that money for whom? Aslan, I'm so surprised. There's some people, they work so much, they don't even go on vacations. Maybe once a year, twice a year. Where's all that money going? It's just being stored in their bank accounts for them to die. And once they die, their family will use it, his family will use it. You sacrifice your entire life instead of spending this quality time with Allah Azza wa Jal so that you at least enjoy the money. No, you die and you don't take anything of it. How miserable is that? So we really have to be careful, brothers and sisters, when it comes to these matters, because the shaitan, remember, he's very active and he's very alert and he's very aggressive when it comes to wealth, and he starts attacking us. And the nafs is already greedy, so these two conspire, your nafs from one side, the shaitan from the other side. It's distracting, the greed, so on and so forth. So we really have to always ask for the rahmah of Allah Azza wa Jal. Ya Allah, you give me whatever is best for me. I don't know what's best for me. But whatever you know that is best for me and for my akhirah and for my deen and for my madhab, my religion, my faith, I want you to choose that for me no matter what it is. This is a dua of someone that really understands the value of things, that really understands that this dunya is so temporary and it's not worth losing Allah Azza wa Jal over the dunya. So like we said, we have examples in history. Last night I mentioned the example of Umar bin Sa'ad. Umar bin Sa'ad knew Imam Hussein. He knew he's the grandson of Rasulullah, Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. But it was his greed for the dunya to be the governor that did not allow him, that prevented him. And we mentioned also Al-Ma'mun. Why did he kill Al-Imam al-Radha? Because of the greed, love of the dunya. Because I want the spotlight. I want all the power. Even though for 2 years he saw the ilm of Ali ibn Musa al-Radha. He saw that this man is an ocean of knowledge. No one can defeat him. Why would you kill such a man? You know. If you didn't know, you may have an excuse, but you knew. That's what greed does, brothers and sisters. It doesn't matter. Even when I know, the greed will be too difficult for me to overcome. There's a tradition, a report that you can find in the early books. Shaykh al-Mufid narrates it in Al-Irshad. You can also find it in the book of Maqtal Abi Mikhnaf and other maqatil, where when they attacked after Imam Hussein was killed, you know, they attacked the tent and they started to loot everything. Whatever they had, they started to loot it. So one of these traditions states that Sayyidah Sukaina, or Sakina, she is the one that narrates the story. Listen carefully, my dear brothers and sisters. She says, someone came in my tent and he started to steal my earrings. He started to pull my earrings, but I saw this person crying. He's crying, but he's taking my earrings. I told him, why do you cry? He said, because I am stealing the earring of the daughter of Rasulullah. So I told him, then stop. If you know, if you acknowledge that I am the granddaughter of Rasulullah, then why are you stealing my earring? He said, because if I don't steal it, someone else will steal it. This is what greed does to the human being. Some of these individuals knew who Hussein was. Son, he told them, didn't, oh Qais ibn al-Ash'ath, or Hijr ibn Abjar, or Fulan, oh, you sent me letters, come and we will fight with you. Do you not know? He gave them all the sermons that they needed to hear, that my grandfather is Rasulullah, my mother is Fatima. Do you not know that I am the master of the youth of Para? They knew all of that. It wasn't about not knowing. It was about being enslaved by their desires. That's why Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam said on the day of Ashura, هَؤُلَاء قَوْمٌ اسْتَحْوَذَ عَلَيْهِمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. The shaitan has completely controlled them. خلاص, they can't. They're slaves. وَمُلِئَتْ بُطُونُهُم مِّنَ الْحَرَامِ. And their stomach is filled with haram money. All the money that they take, it's all from haram, and this is what happens to the human being. And thus you find that Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam, one of the most difficult masa'ib that she had to endure was to see her brother Hussein, her brother Abbas, all these members. Why were they killed? Yes, Yazid had political agendas. Ibn Ziyad had political agendas. But the rest, they came just to what? Just to loot. Just for some lousy gifts from Ibn Ziyad. Just so they can steal something from the body of Imam Hussein. Allahu Akbar. This is what made the musibah even greater. Al-Imam al-Hussein, Sayyid Shabab al-Jannah, is killed for those reasons. It wasn't that he had a personal disagreement with any one of those. But that's what the dunya does. When it completely controls someone, this is what it does to them. They become a slave of not just the dunya, not just their desires, they become a slave for Yazid, for Ibn Ziyad. Look at how dedicated and loyal they were to Yazid and Ibn Ziyad. The orders, all the orders that he gave, none of them could be broken. Until they took them to Kufa, and then they took them to Sham. And you know, Sham was one of the most difficult stations for Ahlul Bayt. Because Sham was the capital of Bani Umayyah. Ahlul Bayt had absolutely no supporters in Sham. In fact, everyone in Sham hated Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because they were all brainwashed by Bani Umayyah, thinking that Ahlul Bayt are the enemy. In Sham is where the family of Rasulullah saw so much humiliation. In Sham is where Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam was treated like a slave. In Sham is where Sayyidah Zainab, Imam Zainul Abidin, and all the women and the children were taken to a deserted land that was left in ruins. This is Ahlul Bayt, the family of Rasulullah, and they are left to the ruins. چقدر سخت بود اون روزهایی که حضرت زینب و آن یتیمها به شام رسیدند. تو اون خرابه گذاشتند. روز آفتاب چقدر اذیتشون میکرد. شب سرد میشد. این خاندان پیغمبر باید تو این خرابه بخوابن. چه اهانت هایی دیدن، چقدر زجر کشیدن این خاندان امام حسین علیه السلام. و از مهمترین و بزرگترین مصائبی که اهل بیت دیدن در شام، مصیبت این دختر 3-4 ساله ابی عبدالله الحسین، حضرت رقیه. Imam Hussein, on the day of Ashura, amongst his final wills to his sister Zainab, he told her, please take care of my kids, my orphans. Make sure you take care of them, my dear sister Zainab. I'm entrusting you with this because Zainul Abidin will be too sick to do anything. She told him, don't worry, my brother Hussein, I will take care of all your children, all the orphans. Until they reach Sham and the rubbles and those ruins of Sham. این دختر 3 ساله ابی عبدالله الحسین که خیلی متعلق به پدرش حسین بود، از روز عاشورا هرچی سوال می کرد پدرم حسین کجاست، بهش می گفتن پدرت رفته به سفر، یعنی سفر آخرت. این منتظر پدرش بود که پدرم برمیگرده. صبرش داشت تموم میشد. They told her that your father has gone on a trip. She was waiting, when will my father Hussein come back from the trip, until one night in the ruins of Sham she sees her father Hussein in her dream. She sees her father Hussein in her dream, and then she wakes up in the middle of the night. She misses her father Hussein too much. She starts crying, where is my father Hussein? Bibi Zainab wakes up. Oh Ruqayya, please go back to sleep. She says, no, my father Hussein, I just saw him. Eventually she cried and cried until all the other children, they woke up. پدرم حسین کجاست؟ من پدرم را میخوام. این سر صداها به قصر یزید ملعون رسید. حتی یزید نتونست بخواب. پرسید چه خبره در خرابه شام؟ گفتن بهش یکی از یتیمای امام حسین این از خواب بیدار شده، میگه پدرم حسین کجاست؟ پدرم را میخوام. یزید گفت خب پدرش را براش ببرید. سر بریده ابی عبدالله براش بردن. They took the head of Hussein, they covered it and they placed it on a tray. رو سینی گذاشتن. آوردن مقابل این دختر گذاشتن. این دختر فکر کرد غذا براش آوردن. گفت من گشنم نیست، من فقط پدرم میخوام، حسینم را میخوام. بهش گفتن همون چیزی که شما میخوای تو این سینی، این پارچه رو وردار میبینی. They told her whatever you're crying for you will find it on the tray, you just have to uncover it. She uncovered the tray, she saw the bloody head of Hussein. She threw herself on the head of Hussein. She started to kiss the head of Hussein. ای پدر جان کی من را یتیم کرده؟ ای پدر جان کی سرت را بریده؟ ای پدر جان کی ریشت را خونی کرده؟ My dear father, who is the one that has made me into an orphan? این بچه انقدر ناله زد، انقدر گریه کرد. یه مرتبه دیدن صدای این بچه دیگه نمیمد، ساکت شد. رفتن فکر کردن خوابید رو سر پدر ابی عبدالله الحسین. رفتن که بیدارش کنن. اینجاست که امام زین العابدین فرمودن عم زینب، ای عم زینب خواهرم از غم فوت کرد، مرد. Imam Zainul Abidin told us, he told his aunt Zainab that he told her let her go, for she has died over the head of Hussein out of grief. Allahu Akbar. I've never seen a child die out of grief. I've never heard. What happened to Sukayn? What happened to Ruqayya on that night? This is when all the orphans and all the women, they started to cry now for a new musibah. It's not like they did not have enough masayib. Now they had to cry for losing Sayyida Ruqayya alayhi salam in Sham. اما بیا گم شده پیدا شده، اما بیا گم شده پیدا شده، کنج خرا به شب یلدا شده، مژده که باز سفر آمده، شام رقیه به سحر آمده. چی گفت رقیه به پدرش؟ پدر فدای سر نورانیت، سنگ جفا که زد به پیشانیت ای حسین جان. ای پدر جان بس که دویدم عقب قافله، پای من همه شده پر آبله. بابا جون کی رگها یه گلویت را بریده، پدر جون ای گل خوشبو ز درختت کی چینده. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. نسألك اللهم وندعوك. Raise your hands مؤمنين and مؤمنات. Raise your hands and supplicate to Allah Azza wa Jal and seek your hajat. And seek your hajat through Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salat was-salam. Your hearts are broken, your eyes are tearful. We are all remembering the masa'ib of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Let us seek them as our shufa'a to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. 10 times همه با هم. يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله. إلهنا بحق محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين والأئمة من ذرية الحسين فرج عنا يا الله. Ya Allah, we ask you to forgive all our sins. We ask you to accept our a'mal. We ask you to grant us all our hajat. Anyone that is sick from the mu'mineen and mu'minat in our majlis and from their family members and friends, grant them full shifa and recovery, Ya Allah. Hasten the reappearance of Sahibul Asri wal Zaman. Grant us the ziyarah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Grant us the ziyarah of Aba Abdullah al-Husayn, Ya Allah, very soon. Grant us the shafa'ah of Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt on the day of judgment, Ya Allah. Unite us with Muhammad and Al Muhammad. In the next life, always keep us on their path in this life, Ya Allah. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all the mu'mineen mu'minat that have departed and left this dunya. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha for them after a loud salawat for Muhammad and Al-Muhammad. صل على محمد وآل محمد.